Welcome to the Strength for the Day podcast, which is a daily Bible study with Dennis Fountain. We hope this time together will be challenging, sharpening, uplifting, encouraging, and strengthening to your Christian walk. Thank you for joining us, and we pray you are helped through today's study.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Strength for the Day as we wrap up another week in our journey with Jesus. Of course, we try to post or have the episodes drop Monday through Friday. And so this episode dropping on a Friday, wrapping up another week. And so we have been traveling with Jesus, a chronological study of his life. Of course, if you've been with us in the last few episodes, you know that we are coming near the end of Jesus's earthly life and ministry, leading up to the cross, which we will begin to dive into even today. But Jesus has been betrayed by Judas. He has been taken to the house of Annas and then Caiaphas, and then, of course, ushered to the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders, into Pilate, and then to Herod, and then back to Pilate, where we find him today. And so we pick up our story in John chapter 19. I'm going to read, read through it. We're going to kind of break this up as we go along. Read, talk a little, and then give an application at the end that I think will be extremely helpful today. And so John chapter 19, verse number 1, it says this: "So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, 'Hail, King of the Jews!' And they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to them, 'Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him.'" So here's here's Pilate now mocking Jesus with the soldiers, and Pilate, of course, being a Roman ruler, having the opportunity and really having the soldiers at his disposal to beat Jesus and to scourge Jesus and to mock him. All of this while he found no fault in Jesus, and all of this because of the pressure of the Jewish religious leaders. And I want you to pay attention to something as we make our way through the passage. I want you to pay attention to how often in the passage, of course, John writing, John helps us see kind of the heart of Pilate in this. Remember, Pilate's going to say, "I find no fault in him," but I want us to pay attention to how often Pilate references himself and the control that he has. So here at the beginning, Pilate took Jesus, so now I'm in authority, scourge him, make fun of him, allow the soldiers to make fun of him, then go back to the people and say, "Now I'm bringing him to you, and I want you to remember, I find no fault in him." All right, verse number 5. "Then Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, 'Behold the man.' Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, 'Crucify him, crucify him.' Pilate said to them, 'You take him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him.'" Now he's trying to pass the buck off. I beat him, now that's all I'm going to do. Verse 7. "The Jews answered him, 'We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God.' Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again to the praetorium and said to Jesus, 'Where are you from?' But Jesus gave him no answer." So now the script turns a little bit. The Sanhedrin, the religious leaders, say, "He has broken our law because he claims to be the Son of God." And Pilate kind of shakes up a little bit. It says when Pilate heard that, he was the more afraid. You see, although all this time, Pilate knew in his heart that Jesus wasn't guilty, and I believe he speculated that perhaps Jesus was the Messiah. And when this is said, now he kind of is leaning to that, like, man, what am I doing? What role am I playing in this? And yet this whole time, he never chooses to do the right thing, all because of the push and the pressure of these religious leaders. Verse number 10. Pilate said to Jesus, now catch this, and we'll come back to it at the end, but stay with me on this one. Pilate said to Jesus, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you, and I have power to release you?" Now Jesus answers, John 19:11. Jesus answered and said, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend." And now we're putting our thumbs down a little bit more, putting the pressure on you a little bit more. "Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." Isn't that funny? These Roman Jewish religious leaders, say that 5 times fast. These Roman Jewish, Roman. Now I can't even talk. These Jewish religious leaders, they did not like the Roman government being in control of them. And yet now, because Jesus doesn't fit their narrative, because they know he's the Messiah, they don't believe it, but they know it. They've seen the miracles. They know what he's proclaiming. They've heard him teaching. They can't find fault against him. Remember in the trials, they were trying to find people to falsely accuse him, and they couldn't find any. They know this. They know who he is. Jesus even called them out for this multiple times, saying that you have the truth staring you in the face, and yet you reject me. So they know this. But because Jesus isn't their Messiah, they're not claiming him, now they're leaning and siding with their enemies. Now they're saying to Pilate, "Hey, anybody that tries to have an insurrection against Caesar, man, they ought to be put to death." Now we're trying to call the Roman government to our side. It just goes to show that sometimes when we have something in our mind that we want to do, we'll make any excuse and every excuse to get it done, even if it's the wrong thing. That's why a lot of people stay in sin or a pattern of sin, because they know what they should do. They know they shouldn't be thinking that, looking at that, being with that person, seeing that, talking like that, whatever it is. But they excuse it. Well, that's just the way I was raised. Well, and we do that with sin often. We excuse it away by saying, well, you know, in their situation, they're using the Roman government to back their point. It just helps us kind of see that whenever we're trying to maneuver pieces and make our plans fit, sometimes we step over the line, and they were here. And that's not the point I want to make, but that just came to my mind that I think would be helpful. Verse number 13, when Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in the place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." But they cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priests answered, now catch this, "We have no king but Caesar." Wow. Now they're even lumping themselves in with their enemies, all to get their plan accomplished. Their pride is driving them just further and further and further away from where God wanted them. Verse 16. Then Pilate delivered Jesus to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus and led him away. There's a lot going on in this passage. I see Jesus allowing them to beat him. We've talked about that, the mocking, the scourging, the ridiculing that took place. But the one thing that I really want to kind of key in on for our last minute and a half together is verse 10 and 11, where Pilate says, "Hey, Jesus, don't you know that I have the power to crucify you and I have the power to release you? Why don't you answer me?" And Jesus' answer to him is, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above." The idea here is that while man was manufacturing and making all of these plans, and Pilate thinking, I have all this power, he was neglecting where the real power came from, that it is from God, that God was the one that was allowing all of this to take place. There's a lot of people that have this mindset that God is like a puppeteer up in heaven, that he's just kind of making things move, and he's the one that is making people do certain things or say certain things, and God makes that happen. But what that does is that takes away the free will of man, that God allows us to make choices. On the opposite end of the spectrum is a group of people that teach that God is completely absent from the affairs of life, from the situations of life. That God started the world and then was like, all right, I'm just going to see how this plays out, and it's like someone who just starts a game of some sort and then just steps back and let's just see how this all works out. Never involved, never refereeing, never helping, never coaching. That's kind of the opposite end. So there's these two thoughts. One, God is a puppeteer. The other, God is completely absent. But I believe the biblical thinking is right in the middle, to understand that while man has free will and man makes free choices, that God allows those choices to happen, and God can see those choices coming because of his foreknowledge, and God can allow these situations all to work out so that ultimately he is glorified. It's not about God being a puppeteer or God being absent. It's about God being exactly who he is, the God of the universe who has foreknowledge. He knows what's going on. It never takes him by surprise. He allows decisions, but he uses it all to bring honor and glory to him and to his son Jesus. And so in the passage, Pilate's thinking, I have all this control. But he didn't realize that really that control he only had it because God had allowed it. The challenge that I want to give to us today is really just a simple one. All too often in life, we begin to think that I've got this great power and don't you know who I am? And we have this pride about us that drives our decisions. What we need to do is we need to step back and realize that, man, we actually have an all-powerful God. We have an all-powerful God who is allowing decisions to be made and then ultimately using those decisions to glorify him. So with that, what do I do? Well, today, my challenge to you is this. Today, would you humble your heart? Humble your heart before God. God, thank you for being an all-powerful God. God, thank you for being one that sees and knows. And God, thank you for being one that uses the decisions of this life to bring honor and glory to you. God, thank you. This week, we talked already about being thankful for Jesus undergoing all of this and the crucifixion and what he did for us and forgiveness and grace and taking our place. We looked at that in our previous episode. Today, I just think it'd be wise. Look into this story. God, thank you for being a God who allows man to have decisions, but then uses those decisions to bring honor and glory to himself. Hope that'd be an encouragement to you today. Look forward to seeing you in our next episode as we pick up with Jesus going to the cross and that crucifixion starting. A lot that's there, and I think it'll be good. So look forward to seeing you then. Have a good day.